Let's try again. There we go. That time it worked. Okay. Welcome to the Lost Lowdown Book Podcast number 3 with your hosts, Claude and Justin.
Hey, what's up, guys?
Hey, I don't know why I did that intro.
You just set a precedent.
Oh, man.
There's some pattern we have to follow now because you did that. Every third podcast or like every prime number podcast.
Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. I forget which one I was listening to. I want to say it was like towards the middle of season 3, like maybe it was The Man from Tallahassee, or maybe it was like the bird one, Par Avion, but it was one of those where like it was the first time I did a scene by scene, description. Like you had done them all before that. I mean, we didn't always do that, but when we did it, you were doing it, So I did it for the first time, and like it was so awkward. I was like, okay, so we start our show, and Locke's there, and how do you do this? I don't know how to do this.
I remember.
It was very, I don't know.
Yeah, how do you read your notes that you wrote?
Yeah, I mean, I think I probably got better at it over time, but I'm just
that's an art.
The hosting thing is still something I'm not like comfortable with. Anyway.
Give it another what was I gonna 15 say? Years.
So I think something that would be good for the book would be prophecies unfulfilled. I don't know if that's the right word. Because you know,
broken promises.
Let's call it broken promises. Sure. I think every show has this to some extent. Really, like, because I've definitely seen versions of this in other shows. But basically the idea is that like at a certain point, right? And like the context that I'm talking about here is a flash forward, so the flash forwards, they were told kind of out of order, and we hadn't caught up to them yet, right? So the flash forwards like implied that certain story elements were going to happen, And so that's actually the specific one that made me think about this. And I'll get to that in a second, but there's also the simpler ones where it's just like they have some lines that kind of imply that the story's going to go in a certain direction. Probably like the most infamous one that comes to mind is like, how long do you think it takes to train an army? Yeah, exactly.
Oh man, yeah, same thing. I haven't thought about that army in 20 years, but yeah, when you were like the number one unfulfilled, it's like, wow.
Yeah, exactly. It's like there's a clear implication that the story's going to go in a certain direction, and then like nothing, right? A lot of times it was at the end, even when Echo dies and that whole he said we're next, like that was some bullshit. Like nothing happened with that really. And then like if anything goes wrong, Desmond Hume will be my constant, like that, like like they did nothing with that,
and he said you're next. Hold on, let me write these down. But because these are this is a total section that needs to happen. He said we're next, or you're next?
He said we're next, and we had a long conversation about that because it's like it was a dramatic problem, like, and they actually talked about it on the official podcast. I even looked up the transcript on it because I was thinking about it when I was listening to those podcasts, and like they actually had a discussion where they explained in their own way, which is always like a bit jokey and a bit vague, that like basically like they were like, no, he didn't literally say we're next. But like, he said you're next, but he meant the plural you. And then like, so it's like if Locke turns around, and it's Desmond
he
and
says,
like
"I'm next."
Paulo there, and he says, yeah, either way, if he goes, he said, "You're next," Desmond's like, "Me? Like what?"
Yeah.
And it's like confusing, so he's like,
Yeah.
we didn't want to have him literally say the thing that Echo said, so he just kind of interpreted it as like he meant the plural, as in all of you. So that's why he says we're next, even though he didn't literally say we're next. So anyway,
you sure Echo didn't say y'all next?
Y'all next.
What could he say? Y'all next.
Y'all next. See, that's the thing, right? Like in Romance languages, probably in other languages too, like they have an actual separate pronoun for a plural you, so you can actually tell if someone is addressing a group, of yous based on, or a single you, like based on the pronoun, I mean, there's also the formal thing, but like, we don't have that except for y'all, and I think in I want to say it's like Pittsburgh or something, they have like yins.
Yins. Yeah, I heard about yins and I didn't believe it. Didn't believe it was true. But apparently yins.
So yeah, like it feels like that's a gap in the language, like there is a distinction there that matters sometimes, and in a line like that it really comes out, because in a way, like it could have made more sense if he said to Locke, "You're next," you specifically, and they could have even said, if they wanted to, like, "Oh, he was wrong, like he thought Echo meant all of them, but he actually meant Locke," but they didn't even really say that. They never even mentioned it again, which is why it's, in the Broken Promises section, basically.
Yeah. What was the first one you mentioned?
How long would it take to train an army was the first
one.
No,
you mentioned one before that. The one you started with. You were talking about the flash sideways.
I didn't actually get to the one I started with, but another one I mentioned was if anything goes wrong, Desmond Hume will be my constant.
Oh, okay.
That's another one from season 4.
I guess nothing went wrong.
Yeah, I know, right? I was really trying to work it, at the beginning of season 5, like when there's all that stuff with Dan and he's like looking at the journal, and there's a lot of business with the time travel, and like I really thought that they were going to go back to that at that point,
Yeah.
They even do like another sort of Dan at Oxford thing, and there's like a like Desmond goes to Oxford, like it's like you would think there would be an opportunity to bring that up, but no one ever cares again. So anyway, yeah, that was another one. And then the one that I was just listening to was the one from The Economist, where, and it's a little bit more subtle than those, but it's like the big reveal at the end is that Sayid is killing people for Ben. They're in the dentist's office, and I'm sorry, the veterinarian's office, and Ben comes out of the shadows, and it's like, oh no, he's working for Ben, and
out of the shadows like a rat.
Exactly, like a rat, always like a rat.
A rat.
And so he's chastising him for getting involved with Elsa and like caring about her and stuff, and he's like, you remember what happened the last time you thought with your heart instead of your gun, and then
instead of your gun?
Yeah, instead of your gun. And Sayid says, you use that to recruit me into killing people for you, and then they sort of move on. He's like, I got another name, blah, 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 blah. So I actually have like 2 or 3 nitpicker thoughts from that episode, but like that specific little exchange like just really bothers me, because it kind of implies that the recruitment of Sayid was like predicated on a moment when Sayid had a choice to make, between like violence and love, something like that. Something very like The Matrix or something. Like he had some moment, right? And he chose his heart, and that led to some tragedy, and that's why he's there, right? That's what it implies. But anyone who's seen the show, like we saw how he actually recruited Sayid, which was like he just told him like, this guy here, he's the guy that hit Nadia, right? And then Sayid kills him, and then he's like, who's next, right? So Sayid kills him, like he shoots him with a gun, and he's like, who's next, right? That's the recruitment. So it's like, you use that to get me to like, he used this gun when you recruited him. So there's that. Like, but then the other side of it is the original incident with Nadia. It's like, A, who knows if that guy even was the one that hit Nadia? B, like, stop with his heart instead of his gun. I mean, they're just like standing on the street, and like somebody hits Nadia with a car. Like, there was no. It doesn't even make sense.
I take your point, but I wonder if he's trying to say something like, almost like he's trying to say Sayid should have been preemptive, like thinking with his heart was, and I don't know if this works. My theory here works, but thinking with his heart was being with Nadia while there was danger out there that he could have stopped with his gun. So he prioritized his heart by being with her, and what ended up happening was she was in danger, and well, they're both in danger or whatever, but she got killed.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And I think that could have worked, but I just think there's a scene missing there, which is like, if they put in a scene where Ben comes to Sayid like right after he gets back and is like, you need to kill these people because they're a threat to anyone you care about.
Or just another scene where with the same goal, where Sayid knows that there's a threat out there but ignores it.
That's the thing. Like,
that's the story.
He never had the chance to make that choice,
He didn't. Yeah, exactly.
So that's why it doesn't feel like that ever happened. Like, it seems like he was fine. He had no reason to believe that there was any particular threat out there. And then suddenly this thing happens. And then, like, at her funeral, Ben's like, oh yeah, this guy killed her. Like, it was intentional, it seemed like a hit and run. And I think that's what he assumed it was. And for all I know, it was that. Who knows what's true about that? But like, I don't know. Yeah, I think that story could have worked, but they didn't write it that way. And so then I hear that line and I'm like, it just doesn't add up. Because like on the podcast, we're speculating about all these possibilities for what Sayid's going to do, how this, you were like, oh, I think it's going to happen on the freighter. Maybe Nadia's on the freighter. We're trying to like work out a thing where it's going to make sense, where he's going to, choose his thing with his heart instead of his gun. And then that'll lead to, the sequence of events that leads to him killing people for Ben.
Oh, that's too straightforward.
Yeah. Exactly. But yeah, there's so many more, Claire getting on the helicopter, the stuff that Jack says when he's at Locke's like coffin, and Ben shows up and he tells him like all the stuff Locke said. Like, he says all this stuff, and then you see the scene later and it's like, Locke didn't say none of that. Like, what? Like, unless there's a deleted scene where he says some more stuff that we didn't see on screen. Like, he didn't say anything that Jack said he said. So it's just like, what? Like, it just doesn't, So yeah, I feel like they do those things sometimes. I guess like another one I might put in that category, it somewhat is like the island at the bottom of the ocean, in the Flash Sideways. Like, they kind of do nothing with that. And it's like, it seems like it should be a big deal, So I feel like any of those sort of things where it's like, it seems like it's setting up like a particular storyline, and then like it's like they don't even try to retcon it, or they don't even mention it. I guess another example would be Jacob saying "help me" in the cabin, or the Man in Black, or whoever that is, it just feels like that kind of goes nowhere, even though at the time it seemed like a really big deal. And I just think like Lost is like littered with those kind of things, those like vague sort of insinuations
That
of
was the
like
alternate title of the show.
storylines that
Vague
like
insinuations.
should have come to be, and like they lead you to expect, and then it's like I don't really know what happens. Like, is it that they forget? Is it that they just change their mind? You know, I don't really know like how it happens that they just do this, but I have seen this on other shows. There was a big one on Buffy in the last season. Like, there's this like big prophecy, like this thing's gonna happen, and like this, and you better watch out because blah 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 blah. Like, not to spoil it, but like I was like, oh shit, like this is gonna be crazy, right? And then you get to the end of the season, it's like, that never happened. Like, what? Like that was just bullshit. Like, why did you get me hoping for this like big dramatic event that just like never happened, So it's like, it's not, I mean, other shows have done it, I guess is what I'm saying, but it does feel like Lost like really piled on with those kinds of things, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe even the psychic, Claire's psychic, like, is sort of in that category. Where they make all these like grand pronouncements, and I guess like some of those go in a retcon category because they did come back to the psychic and like kind of imply that like what he said was bullshit, and that, I guess that counts as a follow-up. But it definitely seemed like they were going for a thing there that, never really comes to be. Maybe the others don't leave tracks, that's sort of in that category.
Who even said that? Where did it even come from?
I think it was Echo who said that.
Wow.
I think so. Let me see. Somewhere in season 2. Let's see if I can find it. Here we go. Yeah. It was Echo. Boom, boom, boom. Yeah. Yeah. I don't remember who he said that to or what episode that was, but yeah, he makes that claim. He might have said it to Jin when they were like hiding, crouching in the bushes while the others pass by.
Yeah, something like that. Sounds familiar.
It's definitely from that era. But he makes that claim, and then, like we were talking about it like throughout season 3. Like, how are they not leaving tracks, right? They have feet, right? They're walking around, right? Like, what? Like,
yeah, feet.
Like, I don't understand.
The others are feetless.
Yeah, like there's not, like they just seem normal. So like, why wouldn't they leave tracks? And it didn't make sense. We were really trying to like it. And then to me, like the ultimate troll is like if you go to the DVD or Blu-ray or whatever, I think it's for season 2. On one of them, like if you wait long enough in the menu, it eventually like pulls up this thing where you see the others pass by, and then there's someone coming behind them with a little like branch with leaves on it, like brushing away.
That's it. Well, it's that like that particular perspective of the show where like you can't rely on characters just because they have particular dialogue doesn't mean anything. Like, why? Like, if a character says the others don't leave tracks, at most that means that's what they think based on their experience. Yeah. But that's not objective truth.
Right.
And, Echo's not a tracker. He's not an expert at trails and tracking. So even his opinion has less weight, right? Than somebody else saying a similar thing. Like somebody who's a great tracker, like, oh, I know tracks and they don't leave tracks. But it's like that's not the way you normally ingest stories, by being skeptical of what everybody says all the time.
Indeed. Yeah, it took a long time to get used to that. But it really is I mean, that
Oh,
thread
like
runs.
monsoon season's coming, you
Yeah,
know.
perfect. Oh,
And it's
that's
like,
actually, that goes in the
yeah,
category, because that's definitely something that they did to like trump up drama, and like, but it was bullshit, and they basically like said that later. They're like,
yeah,
oh, they did a whole mobisode about that, where it's just
yeah.
like, oh, he
I
doesn't
think,
know nothing about weather, like he's a high
yeah,
school science
exactly. And
teacher,
I
like.
think that was a show. That was a show doing a lot of effort trying to tell us how to look at the show. And I don't, like you said, it took a long time because you get that answer and you don't know that that's the show uh giving you a hint on how to view the show. It just
Yeah,
seems like bad writing,
it
and
just
it
seems
seems like
crappy. Yeah,
it seems
exactly.
crappy, and it seems uninteresting. But it's really like, hey, knock knock audience, like these characters don't know anything, and also sometimes they're just lying, and also
Right,
sometimes they're just wrong,
right,
and
right.
all of that is on the table for you when you decide, what you think the answer to something is or how pieces fit. Um, and it's yeah, we've talked about that so many times, but like no other show is really like that, where there's that literary technique of the unreliable narrator, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this is like a show where there's unreliable everybody, you
Right.
know, which is like a different version of that, which is like no one can really be trusted. Imagine if like you're watching Lord of the Rings and Gandalf's like, oh, no one can resist the power of the One Ring, but it's like, it's not that true. It's a bunch of people who are like, I can take this ring, take it or leave.
Eh,
It's just like that's just what he believed because that's what he heard one day,
maybe Gandalf's just
whatever.
wrong.
Or Gandalf's just wrong. Can you imagine like the end of the movie? The end of the story. They get to Mordor, and they get to Mount Doom, and they throw the ring in there, and then the ring gets more powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Back in
yeah.
its source. But they're like,
That was the
we were
worst
wrong
thing to
about
do.
what it took to destroy it. You
Yeah,
know. Um,
that was a
and
horrible plan.
yeah, that was the worst plan. Yeah, yeah, the Balrog comes up or something, and he's
Right,
like, "Gotcha
right.
now, thanks for my ring." Um, yeah, I find this maybe I'll write that down as a way to capture this big idea, the unreliable everybody. Uh, uh, because it's a very what's the word? What's the word for something interesting and annoying at the same time? Because that's what it is.
Wow. Is there a word for that?
It's probably some like Icelandic word for that particular thing. You know how there's all these interesting like Swedish and Norwegian like words and phrases for these crazy concepts. You know what I'm talking about?
I think
There's like a
so.
there's like a word for like um what was the one I saw a while ago? Like the feeling you get when you stare out of a window and it's snowing, but you're inside and
Yeah,
it's warm. Like something like
right.
that. Like those
Yeah.
weird like concepts.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, you're right. Yeah, there probably could be a word for that. But yeah, it seems like maybe not an English word. At least not
Yeah.
one that I know. Um,
But
uh,
yeah, I find it like that where it's a very interesting thing. Because then it makes you even more part of the story because now you have to decide what you think and you can't just trust, certain people to be right about things.
right, and New Year's Justin like had a lot of trouble with that, because like the policy of New Year's Justin was like, I'm just gonna believe stuff, like if it looks like
Yeah,
it's this thing, and like
yeah.
I'm just gonna like take it at face value and not like second guess every single thing, because it was driving me crazy doing that,
Hmm. Hmm.
because it's just like when
Why?
you seriously question like everything that characters say and everything they do, like it almost gets exhausting thinking through the possibilities of like what, you know what I mean. So it's just like I wanted to like
Hmm.
sweep clear that and just like, I'm just gonna go with this. And like, if it's not that, oh well. But like, so but yeah, it's totally true that, I mean, that theme was present all the way to the end. I mean, if you go to Across
Mm-hmm.
the Sea, I mean, you see examples of that throughout the episode, of characters just like saying stuff, making
Oh yeah.
assumptions. Maybe some of what they say is right, maybe some of it's wrong,
Mhm.
but like, it's just what they believe, where it's not like objective truth or something. And I guess that is true in stories, like, normally, but I feel like more often than not in normal stories, even though it's technically true that characters just say stuff like based on what they believe, like, it's written by someone, it's intended to convey information to the audience, you're supposed to believe it, and and I mean, even if it's the kind of story where they're going to reveal later that that character was lying, or was missing some piece of information or something, like, you're meant to like take that as part of the story development, like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
like, what this character said, like, is supposed to be true. Like, think about like Christopher Nolan movie, right? Like Inception or something, right? Like, Leonardo DiCaprio sitting there and explaining like how this thing works. Like, what if
Oh,
he's
imagine he was
wrong about
wrong.
all that?
To get into the guy's mind, and all the rules are wrong.
Yeah,
All the archetypes are wrong. I mean, that's a different movie, and it could be interesting, right? And like, yeah, and then yeah, there's so many things that could go wrong, but yeah, when he's explaining the rules, those are the rules, and those are objective rules.
yeah, they pretty much work. I mean, there are some like little things that like go wrong, but like, it
Sure.
isn't like you're supposed to sit there and question everything he's saying and like, do you really know that, or are you just like
Mm-hmm.
assuming that? It's like, so yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that, I mean, that's a frustrating thing. I mean, you can go back to like, oh, if the man in black leaves the island, it's the end of the world, or
Yeah.
it's gonna be pretty bad, or maybe the island will be destroyed, or I don't know, maybe it's okay. Who can
Maybe it's
tell?
fine.
Like, it's like, who knows? I don't know why anyone believes that, or what they even believe specifically, because
Well,
they
that's
were
the
all so
thing.
vague
That's it,
about
and
it.
that's there's like this multiplier effect, right, of being on the island and seeing things you can't explain, which 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 lowers the barrier to entry for all these other ideas, right? You go, damn, well, I see a smoke monster. I saw the hatch implode. I saw the
Right.
island move. Shit, maybe if he does leave, the world will end. You know what I mean? Like, I think
Right.
that's the other part that you get it just like life, where there's other evidence that convinces you to believe in the dubious evidence.
Right.
Just put it that way.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, you're more open to like crazy stuff
Hmm.
if you literally see crazy stuff like before your
Hmm.
eyes, it just makes you more
Hmm.
susceptible to like, well,
Yeah, and then
maybe.
it's hard to be like, well, this crazy stuff is not can't happen, but this crazy stuff
Right.
can happen. It's like, well,
Right.
why?
How, yeah, what do you base that on? Yeah, that's a good point.
Hmm.
That's a good point. I mean, they played the same game with the Swan Station, it was like, if you don't push the button, the world's gonna end.
Hmm.
But they never really answered the question. It's like,
Yeah.
I guess we're supposed to believe it's true, but they didn't really tell us. And like, even when later on, when he has that scene where he's like back in the real world and he doesn't want to lie anymore, so he finally breaks down and he tells his mom like everything that happened in like a very abbreviated form. You know, when he
Hmm.
gets to the part about the swan, he's like, they had to push a button every 108 minutes or something. I don't know. I never really understood that. Like, it's
Hmm.
like, it tells you that, like, okay, Hurley
Which
doesn't
is,
even feel comfortable
hmm,
making a pronouncement about what would have
yeah.
happened there. So, like, if Hurley doesn't feel
Yeah.
comfortable, like, we can't, right? Like,
Well,
a
and
lot.
that's right, exactly. And I think it keeps the audience unclear about what the outcome would have been, but it also makes it where Hurley doesn't come in as an expert to
Right,
give his opinion that we will take as objective truth.
right,
Because even if he said the world will end, from one perspective, we really shouldn't believe him, but a lot of people would believe him and just take it at face value. Well, Hurley said it here that this is what
Right.
happened, so it should be true,
Right. Right. Right.
So they kind of walk it back while not, dispelling the mystery of like what would happen.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it seems like a clue or something. I do think like, yeah, as far as nitpicking stuff goes, like the Swan Station, I mean the failsafe, like like the fact that there's a failsafe like just bothers me to this day. It's just like, why keep doing this if you can just turn the failsafe? But whatever. Then like there's like the whole thing with like when like there's a whole thing in season 3 that goes on for a long time.
Nobody knows about the failsafe. Nobody knows, like, nobody's there to really know what it's really going to do, right?
Well, okay, yeah. Once the Lost characters get in there, they don't know about it. But I'm just talking about Dharma. Like they definitely knew about it. They installed the fucking thing. So it's just like, it just makes it seem weird. It's
yeah. Well, that's where the the timeline is questionable about. The attack from the hostiles, and when did Brzezinski and Kelvin sort of get trapped in there?
Oh God! That's
and
got to go in the nitpicker thing, because that shit just doesn't add up for me. I can never make sense of it. They said on the podcast, like they kind of implied that Kelvin was recruited after the purge, and I'm like, how? Like what? Like tell me how that happened. Like okay, like there could be someone to recruit him off the island, but then like how do they get him in the station when everyone in Dharma's been killed and the others are like living in the barracks? Like what? Like how do you know what I mean? Like I just don't even get.
Well, I can tell you, it's very simple.
All right.
They drug people to put him on the submarine.
Sure.
So they drug him to get him out to the island, and then he wakes up. He's in the Swan Station.
But like, how did they get him in there without the others noticing?
Easy. The others don't know what's going on. They're over at the barracks.
But the sub like docks right there by the barracks.
Wait, they're not at the barracks yet. You're saying after the purge?
Yeah, after the purge.
Yeah, after the purge. Oh, Dharma needs to get him in there. Oh yeah. So then...
exactly. Yeah, the others could do it. If they said the others put him there, it would make sense. But it's like, I don't think they wanted us to believe that. I think they wanted us to believe that Kelvin was part of Dharma, So it's just like, the timeline doesn't make any sense. Like, it's like, wait, how did you... And like, on a related note, like, there's the whole Penny thing. Like, I had this realization like a little while ago, and I made a little post about it on Patreon, that like Penny's age means that like, Widmore must have left the island to like, have Penny like while Dharma was still there. And I'm like, how did they do that exactly? Because like once they have the purge, they use the sub, right? We see that multiple times. But how was he leaving the island, right? And the company too. I mean, there's all that stuff like where it's like it really seems like he must have left before the purge, and like, and yet at the same time, Ben doesn't banish him until after the purge. So it's like he left, and then like. And he had a child with an outsider. All the stuff that Ben says he's being banished for.
He turned the donkey wheel, but the island didn't move, or maybe it moved.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the donkey wheel's like, but I don't know.
How he gets back to the island?
It's a little awkward. Like the donkey wheel is like kind of occupied by Dharma as of like 1977. So I don't know. I mean, maybe he did it before that, but. It's like they were right there, this Orchid Station. We saw Pierre Chang and like Dan like down there, like right by where the donkey wheel was. Like it wasn't that easy.
When did Dharma when did they get to the island?
Well, I don't think it's really known exactly when they got to the island because I think it wasn't established. Like, I think the only thing we know for sure is Dharma was established in 1970. They used the lamppost to find the island, and they got to the island sometime after that. So it should have been like realistically, it should have been like the early to mid 70s, somewhere in there. But I don't think they ever said specifically what year it was.
Yeah.
It was,
Yeah, I was
it
just
was
thinking maybe
somewhere in
there's
there.
some time between when they got there and when they were ramped up, when they were fully staffed,
It,
right?
it,
So there
it's
could have been time where
technically.
the others can go and
But
do
he's got
stuff
to
in
get back
Dharma.
too, right? He can't turn Donkey
How do
Wheel
you
to
get back?
come back. Ain't no other Donkey
That's true.
Wheel.
The only one Donkey Wheel.
Right? And he's back. He comes back. We know he comes back,
Yeah.
right? And I'm just like, so it's like if unless they had some other way, like if he could only leave after the purge, then Penny was like 16. Like in 2004. Never mind, like when Desmond originally met her, like she should have been like 13 or 12 or something. It's just like it doesn't make any
You mean
sense.
if she was born after the purge?
Yeah, yeah, she was born
Okay.
after the purge. She can't be older than Alex, basically. Who arrived like close to the purge time, and there is discrepancy about when the purge happened. There's like
No,
2 days.
yeah. So we know that. Yeah, we know that Widmore would have left before the purge because, like you said, that was part of Ben's complaint.
Yeah,
When he banished him.
yeah.
Wait.
Yeah, no, that's
But when
the
he banished
implication.
him, he banished him on the he banished him to the sub. The sub was
Yeah,
going
he
to take him
banished
off the
him.
island.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like their problems are solved now, but it's like, but wait, what were they doing before that? It's like
Mm-hmm.
I don't get it. Like something's missing here for me. It's really strange. Yeah. So yeah, that's just something that bothers me about that timeline that I can't reconcile in my head. Never mind the other stuff about Penny and Widmore, like, like in terms of like, the boat and the freighter and like Penny's search and, how all that fit, like it, why does she think Desmond was on the island? I mean, that never made any sense to me. Like it's like, it's all very like bizarre. And I think definitely belongs in a nitpicker thing because it's like she just knew because it's the show and it's about the island and stuff, but like it's so arbitrary. Like, anyway, like he could be anywhere. He could be dead. He could be like, stranded somewhere else. There's so many possibilities. He's on a race around the world.
So how about this? Desmond gets to the island. Yada yada yada. He's in the Swan Station with Kelvin. And then Ben from the Pearl Station sees Desmond, and there's like, oh, who's this guy? And they do their research to get his file.
Get some files. All right.
Get some files.
And
then they see he's connected to Widmore through Penny, right? And so maybe Ben sends Widmore a video of Desmond in the Swan Station.
Okay.
And then somehow Penny gets a hold of a video or something like that, or information. Otherwise, is informed.
Yeah.
Through Widmore being informed from Ben.
Yeah.
Or maybe Ben contacts Penny directly to make him hate Widmore or something.
We know he left the island.
It'd be like your father has your fiance or whatever imprisoned here, or don't trust your father. Here's something he's not telling you.
Right. And then he secretly found out about her search because he has his freighter pretend to be her freighter. Like that's part of the ruse that they use when they
first arrive there.
They're like, yeah, no, we're here for Desmond. Yeah. And they even have the picture.
Yeah.
So he definitely found out about it. There's just a whole drama going there with Penny and Widmore where it's like, and it's all off screen. I agree, that's totally possible, but they never bothered to connect those dots. And so it's like, yeah, you just have to kind of like make up a scenario that kind of makes sense and like say, well, maybe it's that. Sure. I mean, why not? Yeah. I could go along with that. But yeah, another like semi-related plot line that like just is so convoluted to me for no reason is like, so when the failsafe key gets turned, like at the beginning of season 3, they make this big deal about like, oh, our comms are down. We can't communicate with the outside world. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Oh, it's so bad. Right? And then at the end of the season, or towards the end of the season, you find out actually that's not even true. What happened was Ben started blocking the signals from the Looking Glass station deliberately.
Yeah.
Right? And not only that, like that isn't even enough, right? Like it's not even just that. To contact the freighter, they not only have to disable the Looking Glass station, which is the thing that Ben set up, but also the radio tower that's broadcasting Danielle's message is also blocking the sat phone.
For no apparent reason, yeah.
Why is this so convoluted? So the failsafe didn't even do any of this. It had nothing to do with any of this. And it's these other two things that shouldn't have anything to do with it. Like, why? What? Oh God! It just.
But that's how life works.
So unnecessarily
That's how life is. You formulate conclusions based on the data you have, and they don't know the other data points, so they can't come up with the right answer. I do think there's something really interesting about that phenomenon of an event that you know about. You go, well, it must be that thing, because you don't know about the other events, or that event is more unique or spectacular or interesting, so it gets more weight to it, than the other events. There's an interesting like dynamic there.
Yeah. I there was a whole thing that we talked about at the end of season 2, like when the failsafe key gets turned and the sky turns purple, as they say, Ben looks up, and like we were having a debate about whether or not Ben like knew that was going to happen or expected that to happen or even understood what happened, And like based on this Looking Glass plot, like I don't know, I feel like I don't think we ever really like said this on the podcast, but like it kind of makes me think that, I mean, this seems like so ridiculous, but it makes me think that he actually wanted the failsafe key to get turned because he must have set up, because like the others all think that the signal's being blocked because of this like sky turning purple incident, right? And it's like it almost makes me think he knew, or he wanted that to happen so that he could have an excuse to block the signals, like to shut down the communication. Because it's like he must have timed it so tightly that where they would believe that, right? He had to have the signal blocked very quickly after the sky turns purple, or they wouldn't have believed it.
In a normal story, sure. It could have just been coincidence. And he didn't need a cover for what was blocking the signal. They would just say, I don't know what's blocking the signal, right? And that would be fine for him for what he's doing. He doesn't need them to have another explanation.
He just got lucky for his plan that there was a thing they could say.
Yeah, exactly. Most of Ben's story is him getting lucky.
I mean, I say that because like I want there to be some sense to what he was doing, because like he has all that stuff when he's in the Swan where he's like, they have the lockdown and he goes out there and, by himself, and he comes back and he tells Locke, I never pushed the button and nothing happened. The clock just reset itself, and it's like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, what are you trying to accomplish? Like, do you actually know what's going to happen? Do you want him to not press the button? Like, that's what it seems like, because he must have pressed it. I mean, if he didn't press it, then
whatever he told Locke, he did the opposite.
Yeah.
For sure. 100%. Yeah. He's trying to shake Locke's faith.
Yeah.
Whatever Locke is thinking is true, he's trying to prove the opposite to just fuck with him, because that's what Ben does the entire show.
Right. Yeah. But it's like you don't know. Does he know what he's dealing with? Like, does he know what actually happens? Like, he's creating a
No,
situation where like the button might
absolutely
not be
not.
pushed. So like, what if the world ends? Like, was it worth it
Dude,
just to fuck with Locke a little bit? Like,
we
what are you
know what Ben
doing?
knows, and it was very little. I mean, it's all summed up when he asked Jacob, "What about me?" Right? What about you? Like, I don't think he knew any of that stuff, right? There's certain ways he might have known, but I think it's fairly clear that most of the time Ben is operating on instinct. He does have some strategies and plans, um, but he's not winning because of intrinsic knowledge most of the time. He's usually winning from lies and manipulation. So I would
Yeah.
put my money on he has no idea what's going to happen. At least because we've seen those times when something unexpected happens and he pretends like, oh, I knew that was going to happen, but it's like
Yeah.
later he's like, no, that was a
That it's like
surprise.
Jacob's cabin, right? Like basically later
Yep,
on he says like
exactly.
I had no idea what was going on. But when you watch the scene, he's like playing along like,
Yep,
oh
that's
man, you've
exactly
had
it.
your fun. He goes to the chair and he goes, you've had your fun. It's like, motherfucker, you don't even know
Mm-hmm.
what's there. What are you doing? Like you're
Mm-hmm.
crazy. Like why are you improving for Locke when like there's a supernatural force in here you didn't even expect? Like it's fucking I don't know. You're right though. I mean that I guess that is just a character and he didn't mind like living dangerously with shit he didn't understand. Like I
Mm-hmm.
don't
Mm-hmm.
know. It's bizarre. I was just trying to make it work because like it works out so in his favor, that whole like
Yeah.
button not being pushed thing, like he uses it to his advantage. So I wanted to try to connect some dots there. I was just it was a desperate attempt, but in general I agree. I mean, clearly in general he didn't know stuff, and clearly in general if he's speaking and especially to Locke, he's probably
Mm-hmm.
lying, especially if he makes like specific declarations about things.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, I think you're right. It's just like that's a crazy character, Like, can you imagine? Can you imagine like you see like a supernatural presence and like you're so committed to like manipulating this other person that you just like play along with it like you knew it
Well,
was
I
gonna
mean, you have
happen.
your fun. You have your fun is still motivated because he does want whatever that thing is that's scaring him to stop, right? So it's not like it's unmotivated from what his actual knowledge is. You know what I mean?
No, I agree, but it's just like, but you don't like he doesn't know what he's dealing with, Like who knows? It's making stuff fly around the room. Like, how do you
Yeah. Well,
know it's okay to touch it? Like,
he
how?
doesn't know. He doesn't. He doesn't. But that's the thing. He doesn't know anything. So not knowing could preclude you from doing anything, or it just allows you to do whatever you're gonna do. Your instinct is right because he doesn't know. You're right. He doesn't know what is good or bad to do in that situation.
I like, I would never like just like pretend like, oh yeah, I totally know what this is, and like this is like what I expected, and I'm just gonna like act like I would normally act if this happened, and I knew, it's it's like I would just freak out and run out of the room, like like why, it's just crazy to me that
Well,
he
that's
he
why you're not leader
stays
of the
there.
others because you wouldn't murder your father and then murder innocent people with gas and then fraudulently take over a group of people and lead them astray for decades for your own personal like fun. Thankfully, you're not Ben.
I guess
But
so.
so there's like 60% of it making sense organically, and like 40% is contrived because of the story that they're telling.
It's like I think about The Shining, right? Like there's definitely scenes where like Jack will like play along with the ghost, but like
Mm-hmm.
it's part of a plot about how he's going insane, you know?
Mm-hmm.
He's losing his grip on his sanity, right? So it's like it's parallel with that he's just having casual conversations with ghosts and like people he knows are dead or whatever. Like when Wendy sees the ghost at the end. She just screams and runs away like a normal person, you know? Like it's like that's the thing like that is weird for me. Like Ben isn't supposed to be insane, I don't think, right? He's like got grip on his like mental faculties. Like he's not just doing, you know, he's not just prowling the island with an axe, like murdering people, right? Like he knows what he's doing.
Well, actually, I mean, listen, he's obviously a sociopath who actually ends up killing more people than Jack did. Jack from The Shining. But I mean, I definitely get your point.
You know,
huh?
But for a reason, you know.
Yeah, it's calculated. It's not because he's crazy. It's because he's like immoral.
Yeah.
But I think that's the thing. Like I said, it's one part that's Ben's character to pretend he's in control all the time, and a second part that they needed to come off that way because they're gonna end up later revealing that he didn't know what was happening.
Right.
And, you know what I mean? But it's like that thing where it's got to look one way when they actually do it,
right?
Even if that's not the way it should have played out.
Yeah.
Once you really know what happened.
Totally agree. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's one of those things, but I think it's at least consistent with his character, though, that he does step up to things that he shouldn't. He fucks around with a lot of stuff he shouldn't fuck around with.
Oh, I totally agree.
So,
I totally agree.
And he gets in over his head very easily because he always thinks he can lie or manipulate his way out of it, and that's what he's doing in that situation. He's both lying in the sense that he's misrepresenting what he knows is happening in that cabin scene, and he's manipulating like Locke and Jacob / Man in Black, whoever that is, into like as if he has control over that situation, right? Like, you've had your fun, I'm gonna tell you what to do now, right? Like, it's just not, it's just not a normal thing anyone would do because Ben's not normal.
Right. Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the thing. It's just so hard for me to. I mean, it's true for a lot of things Ben does, but like a lot of things Ben does, like I understand even if it's not what I would do, but like that's just hard for me to understand. Basically. Like that's the difference. It's like I get why he didn't like Dharma. I get why he killed his dad. I get why he went along with the purge. It's not what I would have done, but I get it. So I don't know. I mean that's the thing. I
feel like I get why he did what he did in the cabin. I feel like I get it. He needed to maintain the illusion that he was in control if on a lot.
Yeah, right? It's just,
and that's the other aspect of that whole thing is the sort of reversal of he's pretending that he knows this is Jacob's cabin and that he's been here before, and then when the stuff starts flying around the room, he's pretending like, oh, I know what's happening here, right? But then the switcheroo is that not only is that all false, but the thing that's in there that he didn't expect to be in there because he didn't think anything was in there actually reached out to Locke.
Right.
So it's this extra level of like, I think Ben has to, the more that Ben does what he does in that scene, the more that reveal is strengthened. I think that's another thing to add to the scene stew or whatever, the recipe that goes into that scene and that storyline is that, you know what I mean? Like, I think the stronger that he seems like he's in control or knows what's going on, then when it's like, oh, not only do you not know what's going on, but the thing that was in there that you didn't even know was in there because you were lying about all this stuff around what was happening, like, it's just the extra thing, which makes the cabin stuff great, right? It's like not only was Ben pretended like Jacob was in there, and he was sort of lying, so it was like he expected nobody to be in there. But then somebody actually is in there, so now you know what I mean? Like the audience is like, their mind is being blown because there's so many
levels.
There's so many levels, Yeah,
Yeah.
and then the end to be, and then on top of that, because it'd be one level if he says Jacob's in there, but he secretly thinks Jacob's not in there.
Yeah.
He gets there to find somebody, aka Jacob or whatever, in there,
Yeah.
right? And then the Jacob talks to Ben. So that's several flip flops and crazy story,
Yeah.
interesting plots in that one little thing. But like one extra level is it? He doesn't, not only, it doesn't talk to Ben. Ben doesn't even hear him, and
Right.
he goes to Locke, right? So that's the extra push, um, which is craziness.
Yeah, 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 yeah. No, that is like that is the cherry on the icing cake, as we used to say. Like, I think it really puts it over the top, and it is kind of incredible that no one in that scene, I mean, except for the Man in Black, supposedly, has any idea what's going on. All of those, both of them are just totally like they don't have any understanding of what they're dealing with
hmm
there.
hmm
And it's so
hmm
it's like Ben is telling a lie, and then he sees a thing, and he goes along with the lie, making assumptions, I think, about what it is. But those are wrong. And then he's
hmm
also lying to Locke, which so then Locke is like
hmm
taking his interpretation, Ben's, and like assuming that this is Jacob and that he's getting an instruction from him. So
hmm
then, so then both of them make an assumption about what that means, but that
hmm
like they're both wrong about everything, basically. Like
Yeah,
they have no idea
yeah.
what's going on there.
Welcome to life.
It's
Aren't you
kind of
happy?
it's kind of amazing. It's amazing to write a scene like that, where it's like one character
Yeah,
is manipulating another character, but like they're both wrong. I
they're
mean, that's
both
just
wrong.
weird. Right? Like usually
hmm
the manipulator is the one who knows what's going on and they're telling deliberate lies, right? But it's like
Yeah,
he's telling lies, but he also doesn't know what's going on. It's like
yeah.
it's
So
weird.
it's funny because in a way, depending on the lies, they could be true.
Yeah. Well, and
Because he doesn't know what's
that
going
goes
on.
back to the fact that Jacob seems to have some association with the cabin, so there was some truth, even though he didn't
Yeah,
know that.
yeah, yeah. This is why we're still talking about the show after all these years, because it's so the opposite of cut and dry that your brain just keeps mulling it over.
Yeah, the layers are so excessive. It's like unraveling it later is like ridiculous.
hmm
It's like how could you right? And you just watch it the first time and you're so naive, because you just assume like as crazy as it is, like we have to
hmm
take something at face value here, right? So it's like I know
Yeah.
Ben lies a lot, but like shit happened, right? So like he must have been right, right? That must have been Jacob there, right? I mean, what else could it be?
hmm
How would he fake a thing like that? Like
hmm
there's no way he faked that, right? And he didn't fake that.
hmm hmm
But like he also didn't know it was gonna. I don't know. It's yeah. It's really hard to believe. It's like
It's like the Prestige.
yeah,
it's like
yeah.
it's like how did he do this miraculous thing? Well, he actually really did it. He did it the hard way. Uh,
Right, right. It wasn't as
it's not magic.
miraculous as
It's
it
murder.
seems. Yeah, yeah. Mass murder plus cloning equals great
Yeah,
magic.
equals magic. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, exactly.
But I think, yeah, no, I mean, that's what makes the cabin and all that. That's what makes that cabin scene so great. Because it's like two people walk into a situation, both want the upper hand. Ben obviously wants it more, but neither is really prepared. I don't know why Lord of the Rings is on my brain, but I'm putting it. I'm like trying to think of an analogy of like Gandalf and Frodo walk into the mines of Moria, and Gandalf is like, okay, when we get down here, there's this big beast called the Balrog, and he's gonna get us if we're not careful. And then like they get down there, and like there's no Balrog, but there's like something else
Right.
that Gandalf has never seen before.
Yeah.
But on top of that, it
And then he's
like,
like, "That's totally the Balrog." I don't know.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay, Balrog, you've had your fun. You shall not pass. I don't know, like,
Yeah.
and he just tries some
Yeah,
shit.
maybe it's like
And
that. Yeah, maybe it's like that, where like before they get into the mines, they're like, okay, there's a Balrog around here somewhere, guys. We're gonna have to fight a Balrog. And then they get to the door, and then the like squid monster in the lake comes at them, and he's like, Balrog, you've had your fun. That's enough, Balrog. But it's like that wasn't the Balrog.
right, but they don't know that, so they're like, "Well, I guess that
Yeah.
was the Balrog. I don't
Guess
know."
that, hey, it must have been the Balrog. He said there was a Balrog here. I saw a thing. So that must be.
It's not
I
normal.
think. I think so much of. I just keep coming back to how lost is life, and I feel like there's a large part of me that is entertained by that. That all roads lead to lost being life, and I feel like if I didn't care about that, I would not be talking about this show anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's just ever present, and you can't escape it. And if I thought that was annoying or not that interesting, I think that would really deflate a lot of the show for me. There's still all the other character and plot stuff that's interesting to talk about, besides
Mm-hmm.
like this big main theme. But yeah, like just that example we came up with about like that, the Lord of the Rings and the fake Balrog thing, Falrog, if you will.
Mm-hmm. There you go. Very good.
Or I was gonna say Fobalrog. Did we add an
Mm-hmm.
F? Or no, you changed the first letter.
Yeah, you
Okay.
changed. Yeah, Falrog was right.
Anyway.
Yeah.
I just find that interesting because that's like life, right? Someone sets an expectation. Step one, expectation set. Step two, an event happens. Step three, you determine how your expectation and that event go together.
Right.
And yeah, if somebody said there's a big monster coming up and it's called a Balrog, and then next thing you see is a big monster, that's how our brains work. We're gonna say that's the Balrog until proven differently. That's the Balrog. Now you could obviously have some people who are contrarians or think differently and go, well, maybe that's not the Balrog.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of thing in that situation. Leave some room for doubt. But yeah, it's so interesting. We go through life believing what people set our expectations to be. The stove is hot, right? What if you like thought people were lying to you about that as a kid? Oh, stoves aren't hot. Let me touch that hot stove.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And some people do that, right? Or some people
Yeah.
don't know. They don't understand what the expectation means, or how hot it really is, or just because it's hot, what's going to actually happen if I touch it? So they get in a situation where they touch it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But so much of how we, learn about the world, things actually need to be true. We rely on things being true
Yeah.
or effectively true. True enough to rely on in some cases, for our understanding. And so that's that thing that Lost gets into. It like sticks a knife right between the crevice there of that idea of like, interrupting the machinery of how you decide what's true based on your experiences and us as an audience based on the story that's being told, and they just like screw with all the mechanisms of how we, because they know that's how we think, that's how we process what's true, right?
Yeah.
And they just get to play with that
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
through characters lying, through characters being wrong, through misplaced meaning,
right.
through all these other mechanisms.
Right.
Chronology,
Right.
the way the story's told determines the meaning you take, and all that stuff.
Right. Right. Um yeah, there's a part of me that thinks like it's like such genius, but there's another part of me that thinks like it's like they hacked storytelling or something.
Yep.
It's like they figured out
Yep.
like how to manipulate how storytelling works to like sort of subvert audience expectations. Like I think like the part that makes me angry or like at least frustrated is like the
Yeah.
way that they know, right? Like they get drama. So like for example, like the monsoon stuff with Arst, right?
Yeah.
Like that provides like urgency to the plot for the end of season one. Like, right? Characters like take that seriously, and that's why the raft launches even, right? And
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's fine for that like to be wrong, but it's like, but you got all this like drama out of it, and it just in a way it feels like a cheat or a rip off or something to then turn around and say, well, I mean, that was just his opinion and yet people can be wrong. I mean, you know, it's
Yeah.
like,
And the problem is that that's true, right? That's the
oh, I
problem.
know.
Like,
I
you just go up
agree.
there and go like, yep, that's just bad writing. Nope, that's not how stories go. You can't like if you couldn't tie fictional narrative literally back to our actual reality that way, then you could stop there and go, no, that's bad writing. That's not how characters should act in a narrative, right? Because throughout time and in different cultures, there's rules to narrative and how characters should behave and what a reasonable plot is, right? And stuff like that. And you can think of like Shakespeare and the reversals and the character identity, all the like the machinations of how people kind of understand stories and what the rules are. And some things you can break and you can be like, no, you can't actually do that, you know. But yeah, they, like you said, they hacked it where they found this way to like get to the source of all narrative, which is reality, which is life. And that way almost anything they do is now under this umbrella, which you can't, you can't say it can't happen. It's not real. It's not true. I mean, it's like life. Sometimes characters are wrong. Sometimes people are wrong. And it's like, okay, damn, yeah, shit.
Yeah,
But I'm watching the narrative, so why aren't they right?
yeah, I mean that's the thing. It's like it gives them this license to let like characters can like basically say or do like almost anything, and then later on they can turn around and do whatever they want and just say, say the character was wrong or reinterpret it or whatever they want to, you know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
they basically can, it gives them this freedom to like just have the story be anything almost, and whatever they do they can say this thing. That's what frustrates me about it, it just it feels like it's a thing where like it gives them license to like have like they I feel like when I watch a thing, like there's a contract or at least a hidden contract between like the
Yes.
storyteller and the audience where it's like I
Yeah.
come for a story,
Yes.
you give me a
Yep.
story, and in that
Yep.
story like you build expectations and you might like flip those around on me. There's a lot of ways that can go, right? But you can't blow up the whole mechanism, right? Because if you break trust, if you just say like anything I
Uh-huh.
tell you is subject to being false, I'm just like, well, fuck you, like get out of my face with that, like come on, like that's not how,
Mm-hmm.
like that's not how this works. Like I trusted you to tell me a story, like and now you're
Well,
telling
and yeah.
there, no one, nothing in the story is true necessarily. Who knows if anything's true and that's life. And it's like, it's true. I can't deny that, but it's also
Yeah.
like, it feels like it's violating something in like my
Yeah.
hidden contract with storytellers, like,
I think yes, the contract you were born with as a human being, sort of instinctively understanding stories even before you know language. And then what you learn growing up watching stories, yeah, I feel like they don't violate the contract. I feel like they found the loopholes in the contract, if you will. It's like or like they turn the contract on the back and they added some extra legalese or something, or like, you know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
it's like it's still within the bounds, but it's like it's not. It's like, oh, it's on the page you never read in the contract. It's like, oh, I nobody ever exercises this clause, the like my story is like life clause. No one ever. So I didn't. So you get caught off guard by it. But I think it reminds me of Rashomon. Another like a movie getting at this idea
Hmm.
in that kind of way of no real objective truth.
Right.
Um, uh, but even in that case, the contract is fulfilled because it's very clear that the point
That's the
is
point.
no
Yeah.
one has the objective truth. And I think maybe that's the other part of what you're saying about feeling duped or feeling like a contract is broken is you don't know going into it that the show is about life.
Yeah.
If you knew that going into it, you'd highlight that in your contract and
Right.
then you'd go, okay, as I watch this show, this is part of the contract, and I see it. It's not a surprise when it comes up. So I think that's the other huge part of it too. Not just that the show is about life, not just that it's hacking the contract, but that you don't know that going into it.
Right.
And that's the part that feels like the manipulation. It's like a meta. It's like a meta manipulation. Like they go one level higher than normal stories,
Right.
and yeah, and it's a crazy thing, and but it feels. Oh, the other thing I was gonna say, it's different than characters just like nothing being trustworthy, nothing said or done in the story being trustworthy, or everyone's just lying and there's like no rhyme or reason or rules, because people are still saying and doing things by their motivations, which are like grounded in their reality. So I feel like that kind of saves them too, where you don't just throw your hands up and go, okay, nothing can be trusted. There's no point in watching this show. There's no point in analyzing it. Everyone's just saying anything they want. You know what I mean? So it's not like that. Like if there's a continuum, right, that you could place it on, it's not like that far, right? Um, but yeah, it's
Well, yeah, no, I agree. It's not like that for the most part, but I do think it is kind of like that when it comes to certain things. Like when it comes to
mm,
some of these more supernatural, mythological parts of the show, I think we do have characters making pronouncements and we have no idea why. And it's not really even clear from
mhm.
their character why they're saying those things. So I do think there are some points where it actually is like that, where it's not even clear from the character point of view, like why they're saying the things they're saying.
Well,
For a
we
lot
might
of
not
stuff,
know
I would say
why,
it
but
is.
we might not know why, but we know that it's because they think that for some reason,
Well, yeah,
right?
sure.
Versus it just being like, truly nonsensical, just characters just, in some like surrealist story or something,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
They're just
yeah.
saying random stuff.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, yeah, I assume they believe it. I mean, sometimes characters lie. Definitely there's some questionable things at various points. But yeah, in general, like, sure. But yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, if it's Locke, like making a misinterpretation, and like I understand why because of, like his backstory and the kind of person he is and so on, like
Mm-hmm.
that's what, or Hurley, with the numbers, like that's fine, like I don't really object to any of that. It's really some of those other things, and it comes into play a lot towards the end of the show, but there's some other examples, earlier on where like and a lot of times it's characters that don't have a ton of screen time and we don't really know that well, and so it's hard to even know like what kind of person they are or why they, you know what I mean? So there's
Yeah.
not a lot of room to even understand where they're coming from when they say stuff. And so like that, I think that's where it feels like, that's where it starts to feel like I'm getting some broken promises or whatever. or if not broken promises, at least like some kind of broken contract or something. So I'm just like the kind of example I was starting to think about stories where like weird shit happens. Like I was thinking about The Sixth Sense, like the famous ending of The Sixth Sense. Like spoiler alert if you haven't seen it. Um, but like at the end of The Sixth
He
Sense,
was dead the whole time.
he was dead the whole time, right? It's classic, right? So the kid goes, "I can see dead people," and then it's like, oh, that's why he could see Bruce Willis, and that's why when he went to the restaurant, like no one acknowledged him, like it's like, oh, he's dead, right? But what if the kid's wrong, right? What if like Bruce Willis is just invisible to everyone but him, but he's not actually dead? Or what if, like, I mean, it's just like, what? Like to me, that just throws off like how the story is supposed to work. Like, it's like, yes, that, right? Technically, how do you know that, right? Can you really prove it? Like, you can't, right? It's not true in some objective sense. That's what the kid thinks, right? Are you sure? Are you sure that's all you see? Like, how do you know? Prove it. Like, right? You can't. So to me, it's like,
well, it's like he's right that he sees dead people, but he doesn't only see dead people.
yeah,
Right? He sees living people and he sees dead people, but he could see a third group of people, which Bruce Willis could fall into.
yeah,
Right? That you're saying like he's somehow alive but invisible.
yeah,
And that could be a thing the kid doesn't know, because just because he said I can see dead people, you know, if this was lost, we would know not to make that such a narrow determination, right? And go, well, that doesn't mean he can't see other things.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And like, what if they're not dead people, right? What if he's wrong? Like, what if they're actually demons that just look like dead people? Or, it's like,
Sure.
it's like, this is what I'm saying, right? It's like once you go down this road, it's like there's no end to you almost can't get a point across, and I think that's why
that's why Across the Sea didn't get a point across.
Yeah, totally. Across the Sea is full of this kind of stuff. It's like, that's why, like,
well, that's the whole point, is you can go back as far as you want, you still won't get the original truth.
Yeah, and that's why it has to go back to like a thing about life, because I feel like it breaks the internal aspects of the story, like just the stuff about the island and like the weird stuff going on there and all that. Like it doesn't give you any footing for really understanding that stuff, and so it's like it can't be about that because it's inherently like incapable of delivering anything about that to you. And I think that part is frustrating because it seems like it should be about that, but it isn't. It's about this other thing that, yeah, I guess that's part of the deal. It didn't really tell you that was the point, and it made you want to know about that thing. But then it's like, but you shouldn't actually care about that thing because it's not about that. It's about this other thing, and
yeah, it makes me think of like if you were doing science and you were like trying to, you're using a microscope and you're like you analyzing something and you want to like see what it's made of, right? Like my analogy here is like you're trying to get to the root source of like what something is, right? So you're looking at this magnet, you're like, okay, what is this thing made of? And then you get to one level of magnification more, and then you see, oh, it's made of these other things. Oh, okay, well, what's that made of? And then you go to another level of magnification, right? And like it seems like Lost is like, yeah, you can just keep going. You won't actually get to a level of magnification that'll give you all the answers. You can just keep going down deep. And also what you could do, since everything's connected, you can go the other way, and go micro all the way out, right? And this is the Holon idea, right? It's sort of like how things are related in these like related scales. So yeah, what I would ask Damon and Carlton is, at what point in the show did they realize they were writing a show about life? What point did they get to where they go, yeah, guys, we're in a microscope, and the more we look, the more we see that there is to look at. And that means that there is no final place we stop at. We can go back in time as far as we want to. It's just going to be somebody saying something about something. That's it. And even if you have someone who's an expert, right? Like you could be like, okay, the donkey wheel, right? That's something that we can go back to the origin for. We can tell you who built it. We can tell you who made it and put it there and all that kind of stuff. Great. That's a small example of something you can have a definitive answer about, which sometimes life has definitive answers.
Mm-hmm.
How much money is in your bank account is a definitive answer.
Right.
Right. But there's these other bigger things that's just about our interpretation on what we're told and what we expect. And we're just living life trying to figure things out, really without the ability to figure them out, which means, therefore, it's almost effortless, not effortless, fruitless to try to figure them out. I think of Jacob sitting there tapestrying for centuries, doing nothing. It's almost, it's almost a waste of time to try to find the source knowledge, because all that really matters is the meaning you place on the result of that source knowledge that you're dealing with right now, right? So it's like, whether or not monsoon season is coming, is there a monsoon right now? No? Okay, then I'm going to do ABC. Oh, is there a monsoon right now? Great, I'm going to do XYZ. So it does something to my brain that my brain likes. It's both frustrating and interesting. And I feel like it's this is why we're writing the book. I feel like this theme is completely lost on most people for the show.
I agree.
Basically, in a way, is basically telling people to AKA let the mystery be.
Yeah.
But it's basically saying, hey guys, like, probably most of the stuff you're doing it for reasons you don't actually understand. Or you haven't really inspected very deeply, right? And that alone is an interesting theme, right? To unpack. But it even goes further to just talk about all of life and reality, and then it's like, okay, well then what do you do if you even come to that realization, right? Now, help me think of a character on the show who on the show gets closest to acting or knowing or believing that, this idea that we're talking about, or, sort of behaving as if there's no real reason to investigate the big mysteries, because at the end of the day, it's just somebody saying something to somebody else. And that I'm thinking Rose and Bernard, like, what we really need to do is focus on the present and what's in front of us, because that's where you're going to have reliable returns on your time, I guess is the way I'd want to put that. Like, you can go off and try to find the Swan Station, and you can go off and try to find the Pearl Station, the big question mark, and you can go down the paths of all the mysteries. But what's your return on that going to be? Well, for a lot of you guys, it's going to be death. You're going to die trying to figure out those mysteries. Or you'll just run into somebody telling you something, and maybe they seem like an authority, but they're not ultimately. Or you can do what Rose Bernard did and actually enjoy their life while they had the time. So yeah, I find that really interesting, and I don't think that comes through as such a major point to people.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and I think part of it is that unlike Rashomon, that has this high concept narrative where we see the same scene from multiple points of view, Lost acts like a normal story for the most part, if you don't think about it too hard, it feels more or less like a normal show,
Yep.
Stuff happens, conflicts, drama, character development, right? All the normal stuff that you get, right? So it's very easy to take it like a normal show, but then it's really, if you start thinking about it and trying to understand it, that it just starts to break apart, and you see that there's this like underlying thing that, you know, if you care about like how the story threads fit together, you realize that the connective tissue isn't really like, what is this, what is going on, you know, how does this
Mm-hmm.
work, why is this happening, but really like it's more about, or at least like functionally, it's more about the characters like interpreting things. I do think there's a point to be made there that like Rose and Bernard like attained the highest level. I actually suspect that they were already awake in the Flash Sideways um, from the beginning.
Mm.
That's something I really thought rewatching it, that they actually knew the whole
Interesting.
time, and they were just
Yeah.
waiting for everyone else. You know,
Like
primarily
classic Rosa
Jack.
Bernard.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. To me, there's a few scenes that make me think that, yeah, so like that they didn't have like these lingering things that they needed to do before they were ready to move on. They were just hanging in
Yeah,
there.
that would make sense
Um,
to me.
and yeah, Bernardi and Rose actually both play roles in like getting Locke and getting Jack in, you know, various places where they eventually end up, you know,
Mm-hmm.
ready ready to meet up and ready to move on and stuff like that. I feel like Jack is like almost there at the end, you know, like I mean, cuz like the thing he cares about is in a way something that's in front of him, and he's definitely, I mean, Jack, to be fair, like he was never really too worried about the whys or whatever, you know, like he was never particularly interested in like what's going on here, what does it mean, you know, like that wasn't his thing, that was really
Mm-hmm.
Locke's thing, you know. But I think the thing he comes to at the end is like some kind of acceptance of like, you know, like this is what I'm gonna do, you know, this is what I believe I'm supposed to do, and that's enough, you know. I think there's something there, but I do think Rose and Bernard are sort of on a higher level of like removal from, you know, that need to know, or that need to like get involved in stuff, to like
Mm-hmm.
somehow like progress or interact or like understand, you know. I think Jack is still like somewhat on that path, and you know he smashes the lighthouse, and you know there's all that
Mm-hmm.
stuff that happens where it's like, you know, he's still like working on it, I guess.
Yes. Yeah.
Like maybe he sort of attains that like right at the end, you know, like right before he
Yeah.
dies or something, you know, like that level of kind of
It,
acceptance.
it's yeah. I think Jack needed to do something. He's a man of action, and he needed to
Yeah,
do something. And it's almost like, you know, that's why like Jacob makes him the leader, the interim leader. You know, is like
yeah,
he knows that Jack needs to do something. He won't be, you know, like yeah, his way of interacting is through action.
right,
And he can't sit there and think about it, and his thinking will solve the problem. He's got to actually physically do something, which is
yeah,
why the story, you know, devolves into like, you know, an '80s action show when he's
right,
fighting Man in Black on the cliffs.
right,
Because that's Jack in his full form, which is just like pure action or something, you know.
yeah,
Which I find interesting because, you know, another question I'd ask Carlton Damon is just anything in terms of like when they were writing Jack and Locke, you know, the duality there. That like why doesn't, you know, Jack, because you just said like Jack wasn't that concerned about the whys, which is crazy because you think as a science, you know, he's a doctor, so he's, you know, he's a
mm-hmm,
scientist basically.
yeah,
And you think the whys would be too enticing for him not to want to investigate, and also because he's got a control thing, right?
yeah,
Uh, you know, the more control, the more safe you can be, you know, in one way of thinking. And you think, yeah, from the aspect of control, he'd want to like know what's going on. So I'd be curious to ask them about like how did they combat what might be a normal tendency to write a character like that to want to figure things out and keep him on this in this realm where for some reason he's not that interested in the big whys,
Yeah.
or the bigger questions, and I feel like so much of that comes off because he's got his dead dad hanging over him for so long
Yeah.
that it seems like, and it's almost like, I wonder if that's what they would say, but it's almost like that, like, if Jack didn't see Christian when he first got to the island, he didn't see basically what he thought was his dead dad, which is a big why behind that.
Yeah.
Like, if that didn't happen, maybe he would have been more curious, but maybe deep down in his soul, like that was a scary thing because now all the whys are under this umbrella of this scary thing he saw that he doesn't like. The last thing he wants to really confront is like his dead dad and why he's seeing him, right?
Yeah.
So I wonder if there's a little thing there with just how Christian plays into his those early days on the island and how that plays into, Jack's willingness or not to kind of be interested in mysteries
You
or
know
the more
what?
supernatural stuff as well.
Now that you say that, it makes me think a little differently about a couple things. Like
Hmm.
they definitely had a running thing of, I feel like, okay, right, the Man in Black, like his thing is he scans people and like he uses their stuff against them, right? If he scanned Jack and he sort of understood that, and he must have scanned Jack if he got Christian, right?
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
I feel like that it makes me think, right? And then there's Jack seeing Christian off the island, and then there's
Hmm.
say hello to my son.
Yep.
It really seems like he's using that as like realizing the psychological impact, and like now it makes me
Hmm.
think differently about the scene where Jack finally asks the Man in Black, "Was that you?" I
Mm.
guess like if you think of that as like sort of a pivotal thing in Jack's like psyche about like dealing with the mysteries of the island, and the fact that that thing was too heavy for him to even like confront
Hmm.
it anymore, like getting the answer and realizing like, oh, it was just this asshole, like in a way, like
Hmm.
that's a
Hmm.
turning point. In a way that means like he's ready
Hmm.
now because he's able to actually move
He's
past.
gotten past that block.
Yeah.
So now
Like,
he's willing. So now when Jacob says, here, this water from this stream and this prayer I'm saying will make you like
yeah,
me, like he can go
he's
there
ready to
now.
do that. Yeah, exactly. Like it actually worked. Like when you think about it that
Well,
way, it
hey,
kind
write
of
that
makes
down for the
sense.
book. I feel like that's a good realization.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Let's see. Okay, oops.
And I do wonder if we can if we took a minute to, well, I'll let you write that down before I keep talking.
Okay.
Type, 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 type.
Okay.
You got that loud keyboard.
All right. All right. All right. It's softer than it used to
So
be. I had a louder one before.
it is right. You're totally right. I was also going to say, if we took a minute to think about all those beats you just mentioned about Man in Black when he did appear as Christian in relation to Jack,
Hmm.
if he was obviously he's been trying to manipulate him, but I wonder if there's any pattern of like pushing him in a certain direction, like ideologically, or like if Jack is getting too close to wanting to know answers, does Christian show up, or if Jack is too disinterested in the island, or the mysteries, does Christian show up?
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
is he showing up when Jack needs to be pushed in a different direction?
It seemed to me like the latter day Christian stuff was trying to draw Jack back to the island. That's the impression I had, at least. You know, there's all that stuff with Hurley and you know, like Charlie's like, you got to go back to the island, and then he tells Hurley off screen like someone's gonna visit you, and you know.
So wait, why does Man in Black want Jack back at the island?
Well,
because he's a candidate and he shouldn't want candidates on the island.
Yeah. Well, he has to. I mean, you know, this goes back to like, you can believe this or not, but I think what he believed, and what he believed is all that really matters, right? I think what he believed is that he had to kill the candidates before he could leave the island. So he had to bring them back.
Oh, not that he had to kill the candidates who were on the island in order to leave the island, but the candidates anywhere in the world had to be dead before he could.
Yeah, I think that's what he believed. I think that's what he believes, because it's clear that he wanted them to come back. Like
Jacob's worst strategy. So Jacob's worst strategy was bringing the candidates to the island.
Yeah, actually, although he did also want them to go to the island because he wanted one of them to take over for him so that they could then kill the Man in Black.
But if you want Man in Black to never leave, then don't bring him to the island, and he'll never be able to kill.
Yeah, the best strategy. That would be the best strategy.
Yeah, but that's the thing. It's like what Man in Black believes the rules are, and what Jacob believes the rules are probably different.
Yeah.
You know, like you said, Man in Black's like, I probably have to kill all the candidates.
Yeah.
Where, you know, but like maybe that's not true.
It might not.
And maybe that's not what Jacob's thinking, which is why he didn't have a problem bringing them to the island, you know, or something.
Yeah. Although actually that's not true. Jacob did know that the Man in Black believed that, because he basically said it in Ab Aeterno. Like, they have that conversation towards the end where like where he tells, you know, Jacob, like, well, Jacob's like, you tried to kill me, and you know, and he's like, yeah, because you won't let me leave, blah blah blah. And he's like, if you kill me, someone else will take my place. And he's like, I'll kill them too. You know, so it seems to me like, I mean, I guess that just implies he'll kill the replacement. Yeah, but
he'll kill the replacement on the island, not necessarily like if they are off the island and considered a candidate, that he had to kill them too.
But it at least implies that he's threatening anyone who would replace Jacob. And so I feel like there's at least like a reasonable assumption that if he knows someone might replace Jacob, he might kill them. You know? I mean, since he would kill him if they did replace him, I don't know. But yeah, I think that's the closest they come to like having a direct conversation about that issue.
Can I bring up a question now of and I don't even know how the timeline works anymore, but like, why did Man in Black try to kill the candidates in the 70s? Didn't he know they were going to be there in some sense?
Yeah, he absolutely did. He absolutely did, because he shows that picture to Sun and Frank and stuff. So he knew that they were there, and therefore he knew that they were going to be there, because he could like interact through time somehow. So yeah. Nah, he should have known they were there. I mean, that's something that's always kind of disappointed me. I mean, among other things, I mean, the Dharma storyline is probably one of my least favorite parts of the whole show, but like, I do think there's a missed opportunity there for the Man in Black to like try to get involved and do something, because they're all like confined and they're all like right there. And and you know, in a way, like they're more vulnerable, you know, except for the fence, you know.
I was just gonna say, maybe that's what their thing was. They're like, oh well, the fence, so now they're protected and he can't get in.
Yeah, maybe that's what they would say, but they weren't in the fence the whole time. I mean, they definitely left that compound quite a bit, so I don't know. I think that's weird.
Do we know, like, because of the time travel and stuff, like in this loophole, like, how do I even ask this question? How do I ask this question? So, like, when Locke goes back to the 40s, right?
Yeah.
If Man in Black
50s, but who cares?
he's on the island.
Anyway, go ahead.
Oh, 50s,
Yeah,
sure.
it doesn't matter.
And he goes back to the 50s. And say Man in Black, he's on the island at the time, right? So say he knows Locke is there, and he understands Locke is from the future.
Yeah.
So that would mean that the 50s Man in Black has knowledge about future time travel, right?
Yeah.
And this guy Locke, and so after that point, he would know at some point this guy's going to go back in time.
Yeah.
Right, and all that stuff. So I'm trying to figure out.
I think he might have known it before that, actually, chronologically. Because of the encounter at the donkey wheel, which I think, I mean, I can't prove it because, like, if you look at the donkey wheel chamber, it's pretty hard to tell what time period it is. I mean, certainly, like, the donkey wheel chamber, like, being there like that, like, dates it to before the Dharma times. And the 50s is like 20 years before the Dharma times. It could have been in that region. I can't for 100% be sure, but based on the context and the time period the people above were, it seems to me like it was actually like long before the 50s. And we know the donkey wheel was originally built like 2,000 years before the present of the show, basically. So I think actually he knew about Locke in the future, like I don't know how long ago that was exactly, but the statue was still standing, for example, which the Black Rock knocked over, so that would put it potentially before the 1800s at some point. Yeah. So I think that's the earliest time when he could have known that potentially could have known that Locke was time traveling, and therefore like some stuff that he would do in the future.
Dude. I mean, it's like you scan Locke, you scan a guy from 200 years or 2,000, however many years from the future, and he knows all of this stuff. He knows about the plane crash. He knows about the Swan Station.
Yeah.
He knows about Dharma. He knows about all these things that are going to come. Yeah. So when the plane crash actually happens, he's ready.
He should be ready.
I mean, theoretically, he should be super ready for whatever plan he's spent decades theoretically working on.
Yeah.
It's weird. It makes me think of Avengers and like Thanos, the whole weird time.
Absolutely. I thought the same thing.
Where it's like, oops, now I know the future. Guess I'm gonna win this. That's such a crazy idea. Yeah. So anyway, I was just trying to think of like in which time periods is there a Man in Black who knows, information he shouldn't know because of the time travel stuff.
Yeah. And I think like, well, I can't be sure, I don't know for sure if he actually scanned Locke in the 50s. There's definitely some scans that happen off screen. But I mean, to me, that donkey wheel thing means that like it's possible that it could have been literally every time we saw the Man in Black, except for the across the sea. He should have known that stuff like all those other times. Or could have theoretically. It's definitely a thing that they didn't take very far, but they could have, like, if they wanted to. And I do think there's an implication there that they just didn't want to specify too much. It goes back to like really feeling like I want a loophole episode, to like tie it together, to sort of have it like thread, I don't know, like to draw the line between the dots where it's like, okay, so he found this out. So like, it means so many things. Like he already knew some of his own plans. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like, and this is where it gets tricky because that's what I was going to say earlier about.
It's like Dark,
basically. It's like, why didn't he kill the candidates in the 70s? It's like, well, because he didn't. Because
he knew
that he had a plan where he didn't do that.
He was going to do it later.
When it came time to do it, he didn't do it.
Right. because they already
do it later
knew
because he knows he
wasn't
does it
going
later.
to do that. Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah, whatever happened.
Yeah. Yeah. So he just, he goes with like, oh, well, yeah, like that's not the thing that was supposed to happen. I'm supposed to do this. I'm supposed to meet Locke in the cabin and I'm, and then I'll, I'll do like whatever after that. Like I'll go to him. I'll go to him at, I'll send Richard to him when he's time traveling and have him tell the, say to like bring everybody back and so yeah. um if they wanted to, like they could have made the Man in Black more like a super villain character. I mean, he had the powers, but for some reason, the way they wanted to treat that was very minimalistic. Like it feels like they used the powers like as little as they could, like just enough to say he had them, but they didn't really make it like a thing in every scene. Like a lot of times scenes would happen. It's like, why don't you just scan him? Like Saeed comes back and he's like, I killed Desmond. He's like, are you lying? It's like, scan his ass. You'll find out. Like, why don't you do that? Like, it's weird. It's like, he just kind of accepts it. Widmore is like, I won't tell you the secret. Like, scan him. Like,
do you think if I could scan him anytime, I would scan him?
That's what he'd say, I'm sure. Because it's such a great power to have, I mean, not to mention, appearing as other people.
What about this? What about this loophole? What about he can only scan a person once?
I think that has to be false. I think that has to be false because I am certain that he scanned Locke twice.
You can only scan a person twice.
Okay. All right. Now that I can accept.
2 scans and not a scan more.
I suspect he scanned Locke 3 times, actually. But I could almost prove that he scanned Locke
what
twice.
If he scans 3 times, Max? Maybe it's like a when you like a photocopier, like each scan he does, it's less resolution, so maybe like the first scan he gets like 100%. A second scan he only gets like 60%. Third scan he's so maybe there's like a diminishing returns of the scan.
Yeah, sure.
We're just inventing bullshit.
Why not? Yeah, no, hey, Alana's just like, he's stuck that way, and it's like, okay, like whatever you say, I don't know.
What? Yeah, and okay, so back to the lines that we were talking about where characters are wrong and we think they're right, giving us objective truth, but they are just wrong for some reason. There's the other inverse side of that where a character, it's the same, like they're just saying things because they think it's true, but we're actually supposed to take it as true.
Yeah, they seem to be right.
Right? It's like, that one seems to be right. Yeah, they're still just, she can't have any objective proof of her assertion, right? Because that doesn't exist there. So she's just thinking that, but it seems like they want us to go, well, that's just a true one this time.
Yeah.
Sometimes the wheel lands on true.
Right. And like, you don't know. I don't know. It's like, there were practical reasons for that, but that was a weird way to do it. It feels like they should have had the Man in Black realize that, because I feel like he would be the one to be more reliable, to know like, oh, I can't change anymore, like I feel like that would have made more sense. Because I understand, like
it's also weird that. Go ahead.
No. Go ahead.
I was gonna say it's also weird that he. Oh, am I losing it? It's also weird that. I forgot what I was going to say. Say what you're going to say, and then I'll remember.
So I got to tell you about this thing that happened on Buffy, and I'll just be vague about it so I don't like spoil anything.
Okay.
Basically, like at a certain point in Buffy, there's a character who can impersonate dead people, right? A lot like the Smoke Monster, right? But what this character ends up doing is basically like, there's a couple of times this happens where this character actually kills someone, but the other characters don't know that it happened. And then he takes their form and like infiltrates, right? And they don't even realize that it's the impersonator. You know what I mean? The Man in Black could have done that, and he never did. Like, I find that very strange.
He can't impersonate somebody he killed.
Can't he?
Sure, why not? I don't know. I just made that up. Call me Alana. Just don't call me late for dinner.
Oh my god. Wow. All right. I'm trying to think of an example, and I'm like, are you even right?
50s comedy.
That's crazy. Maybe you're right. I mean, that's a rule they never told us.
Mother made it that way.
Mother made it that way. Oh god. I can't impersonate anyone I killed. Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh. Potentially Montand would be an exception to that. Although that is like hard to prove definitively because it's very vague the way they show it. But it definitely seemed like he killed Montand. I mean, maybe they could make a technicality that like, no, it was the fall or something. And like, so I'm allowed. It was a loophole. I don't know. That's the closest example I can think of, because it does seem like the people he impersonated were usually people he didn't actually kill himself.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting coincidence. It's like he definitely wanted Locke killed, and he definitely like did things that led to Locke's death, but he didn't literally kill him. So, you know.
Which would answer the question, why didn't he just do that?
Yeah. It made me realize like, oh, there could have been a plot where like someone shows up right from the camp, right? And it's like, I mean, it could have been like any character.
But Justin, he did do that.
What do you mean he did do that?
Wait, what are you saying he didn't do? And then I'll tell you what he did.
What I'm saying he didn't do is like kill someone and then like take their place. You know?
Okay, yeah. Okay.
And like pretend like
he didn't
pretend like they're still alive, they never died, and basically just the other characters don't know.
The closest thing, he like Locke was the best example of that. But he didn't directly kill Locke, is what you're saying.
There's a couple of reasons why Locke is different from that. First, everyone knows he's dead. I mean, at least like the main characters all know he's dead. The second thing is he says he was dead and he came back to life, right? That's totally different from the other thing is like he just pretends like nothing happened, right?
Well, okay, sure. Yeah, like, I mean, it's still the identity thing. He's still pretending to be the
Locke thing is the closest.
I
do agree, but it just made me think like he could have like infiltrated.
Yeah, you're right. There's a more simple plot line of a plot of the week where he just like shows up. Everybody, and then like at the end of the episode, like you find out that person was dead, and then Jack goes over and goes, they didn't just die, they've been dead the whole week.
Exactly.
And then you reveal that like it was Man in Black doing whatever this whole time, and he's gone now. And that's interesting.
Yeah, exactly. It just seems like that should have been possible, and it's just weird to me that that never happened. I
almost feel like that should have happened in like season 1 or 2. That's like a season 1 or 2 plot, but it's too early to be doing Man in Black stuff.
That's the problem. That's the problem. They didn't even really come out and tell us that the Man in Black could impersonate dead people until season 3. So it's like, it definitely would have jumped the gun on the way they wanted to like slow roll the reveal of the powers of the smoke monster and stuff like that. So like, I don't know. That's probably why, but I mean, that's like a storytelling development, like informational, like external kind of reason, but just for the character himself, it just seems like that's a strategy that he could have employed and never did for no period. Like every time he appeared as dead people, like they knew they were dead, and he was like using the fact that like, ooh, I'm dead, I'm a dead person. It's like freak people out, But it's like he didn't have to use it that
I'm a dead person. Look at me. I'm DEAD dead.
Exactly. terrifying.
Who's got 2 thumbs and is dead? This guy. Yeah. Haley Joel Osment can see me. What am I? Okay, so we've talked about a lot. Did we have a point? Did this all coalesce into something to put in the book?
I think there's several things to put in the book here.
Okay, enumerate them.
Shall I?
Please.
So let's see. So the first thing was, so I wanted to have a prophecies unfulfilled or broken promises section. We can definitely fold that into like a character interpretation / like people just say shit / like, there's a lot of ways you can go with that. But I feel like that's a pattern that I just like to draw out a little bit. Then we talked about everyone being unreliable, and how that's like a general thing for the whole show. Like there's no one in the show that sort of knows the truth, period. And so they're just saying stuff, and sometimes they're lying, sometimes they're saying what they think is true, but like you can never just take at face value. You can never be New Year's Justin and just take at face value what any character says. Even though sometimes it will be true, you can never just assume that, because that's not the way life is. So, that's a point that we could make somewhere. Let's see. There's some nitpick things. And then we talked about sort of the manipulation of the storytelling like techniques, I mean, it's related to the character thing, but like just like specifically talking about it as a storytelling function and a way to kind of break trust with the audience, or at least like bend trust with the audience to like lead them down a familiar path, but then kind of cheat them out of, or if you want to use less loaded language, sort of not deliver the expected outcome because the thing they were led to believe is true is not really true. But anyway, I feel like that's a thing. I mean, I think that belongs in the main book, because that's really about like how the show works as a whole, and it ties into the theme of the show, because obviously like that connects to how it is in life in general, right? Like no one in life knows the truth, right? So everyone's doing that all the time, and like we believe people sometimes or not, but like that's just how we have to live. So anyway, so that was a thing, and then we went on to have this. It was actually a really interesting realization about Jack. Like Rose and Bernard were the most enlightened characters on the show, and B, Jack's encounter with Christian may have been like a big block for him in like confronting the mysteries of the island, and finally getting to the point where he could find out the truth about that and move on from it was like a huge turning point that comes almost at the very end of the show. The significance of that was kind of lost on me, because it felt like a throwaway, like, oh, we'll answer this question. It felt like nothing. But if there's actually significance for the character, and I think if they wrote that, they probably thought that there was, then like it makes it mean more, and it makes that whole ending part like work. So anyway, to me, like that's just a huge, I don't know, like how did we not get that before? How is it like 11 years later and we're like, what happened? I don't understand.
Yeah, huge pivotal scenes were like, oh, maybe that was important.
Yeah.
Maybe that wasn't just a waste of time.
Yeah, it was just like, oh, who cares? Well, obviously it was him. Why?
I'm going to write a task for us called reverse. Let me see. Reverse engineer, which is not the right word, but the best idea. Reverse engineer boring / bad reveals, ending plot points.
Yeah.
So basically, like, ask, how could this be important?
Yeah. Yeah, so
And I'm
I'll just
the character.
I'll set a specific example of this task for us for the future because I got nothing on it right now. Because another example of a similar thing right around the same time is the answer about the whispers. Like if we can make the answer about the whispers work, that would be great because I'm still irritated by it, and I would love to not be anymore. I would love for that to have.
Okay, remind me of the scene. Remind me of the scene where they tell us.
So the scene is like basically like it's the episode where Michael appears to Hurley a few times.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, like Michael comes out, like Hurley hears whispers, Michael comes out, and they say a bunch of stuff that's like specific to the episode, but like the part about the whispers is like Hurley's like, "You're trapped on the island, aren't you?" And Michael's like, "Yeah, we're the ones who can't move on." And like he's like, and that's what the whispers are, right? It's you, it's basically you people who are trapped on the island who can't move on. And he's like, "Yeah, that's what it is." So that's basically the scene.
Yeah, I remember that. Well, not everything's gonna work with this task. Some scenes are just.
I just had to set it because I'm like, if there's a way to turn that around where it's like significant for Hurley or it's significant for Michael or some, or both, anything. It isn't necessarily true that we can save it, but that was the first one that came to mind. That was like a big reveal of a big mystery on the show.
But the difference is in the Jack scene, we knew the answer. We knew the obvious answer that Jack was asking the question.
Right.
What we didn't know was the significance of him getting that answer.
Right.
Whereas in the whisper scene, we are getting a reveal. We're actually getting an answer to a thing.
Right.
So I'm not sure it has significance to the characters other than that.
Yeah.
So it would have to be something where, not that it would have to be, but I think maybe that's another factor for this task is scenes where we're like, why are they talking about this? We already know the answer.
Right. Okay. So it's not actually a reveal scene. It's a scene where they go over something and it's like, why would they do this? We already knew this.
Yeah, well, we don't understand. It's not very clear what they're getting out of the scene.
Yeah.
Like, okay, well, Man in Black is just telling Jack something we already know, so it's not for us.
Right.
Not a reveal for the audience.
Right.
Okay, it's obviously a reveal to Jack then. Jack didn't know. But what we kind of got in this podcast was trying to understand the significance. Instead of just like, oh, he found out. The significance is now he knows.
Right.
Like there was a deeper level there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I thought at the time that like, even though like we knew or at least strongly suspected that like they thought that was a review, like that maybe some in the audience like didn't realize that implication,
Sure, that's fair. Yeah.
Because he never appeared as Christian in season 6, so at that point, like it had been a very long time since he had appeared as Christian on screen for the audience, so and like that was even longer ago, so I don't know, like I thought they meant it to be a reveal, but it is true that I think for any hardcore fan of Lost, it would have been like, yeah, obviously that was the Man in Black, come on. I think there are other scenes like that though, because I feel like I remember thinking to myself, like, why are they saying this thing? Like, I knew this thing like forever ago, and then that would be a good place to ask that kind of question.
Yeah.
Of like, what?
Yeah, there are things like that for sure.
Yeah. I was just thinking about one like that the other day, but now I can't remember. So anyway, I'll try to.
Let's turn to our awesome audience. You guys tell us if you remember any examples.
You're there. Oh,
yeah, they're there.
Hi, everybody. We see you there.
So yeah, if you guys have any
Open it up.
ideas that might fit into this, this category of scenes where they're kind of, it seems like a reveal scene, but it seems like also we already know this information, so it's
Yeah.
not clear why they're telling us when they're telling us.
Yeah. That sounds good. And then and then we can maybe figure out a way for that to be like some significant thing for the characters so
Yeah.
that we understand why they put the scene in. And it wasn't
Yep.
just like
It's
over
always about the
explaining to the
characters.
audience. Yeah, that's usually what it
Hmm.
goes back to, which definitely works. Obviously, that was a big part of the show. So, yeah. Wow, look at that. You can contribute.
Well, cool, man. Well, I think this was a good podcast.
Yeah,
So we got a
yeah.
task for next time. I think we should also get back to looking at um, the sort of structure, kind of go through our doc, our table of contents doc, and just keep shaping that up and kind of organizing it on the high level side.
Oh yeah. Definitely. Yeah, we should go back to that. I've definitely been in the weeds more lately, thinking about the finer points.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. It'd be good to do a step back thing. So yeah, maybe we can do that next time.
All right. Until next time. Thanks. Namaste.
All right, namaste and good luck.